Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to Side Hustle Ideas. I am Bill, the company's expert, and welcome to the live stream where we talk all about startups, entrepreneurship, running a business, owning a business, careers, working for yourself, all that kind of stuff. And this is episode number 56. And the title of this episode is The Entrepreneurial Mindset. So we're going to be talking about this a little bit later on. I'm going to be giving you, I think it's 5 major points for how to think if you are interested in becoming an entrepreneur and recognizing business opportunities and doing it successfully. But first, we're going to be talking about tech predictions for the immediate future. I think this is a fun topic. I wanted to do this for some time. And and get in the chat because, when it comes to the world of predictions, obviously it's purely subjective. There is no right answer. It's just opinions. So give me your opinions. You should see a chat box somewhere near the vicinity of my face. If you're watching on mobile or desktop or tablet or whatever device you're watching it on, if you're watching it on your fridge or your humanoid robot that you have doing your bidding, maybe there's a screen implanted in the middle of its chest, something like that. If that's what you're watching me on, right on. Let me know what you think about that stuff. And I don't have the article in front of me. I should bring that up, but I wanted to react to an article I saw this morning on LinkedIn, which is the status of Starbucks, Starbucks is starting to stagnate and fail, and they're wondering what to do. And there's all kinds of opinions being freely offered online, and I just wanted to add my 2 cents to that. But there we go. Anyway, let's get on with this. Thank you, first of all, to my Patreons, to my YouTube channel members. You guys are awesome. Thank you for supporting me. And all the people who do the super thanks thing, super chat, super thanks donors. And to my participants, thank you for being here. We're going to get to your questions too. So if you have questions, you're wondering about something, you're struggling with something to do with a side hustle or starting your own business or anything like that, or maybe you're just interested but don't know where to start, let me know what you're wondering, what you're struggling with, and I will do my best to help you out after we talk about the topics of the day. Yes, and join my channel because membership has its privileges. Okay, let's kick this off. The word of the day is trick cyclist. Have you heard of that word? Whoa, my screen went blank. Hopefully that means that I'm still broadcasting. You got to love these things. I think, here we go. There we go. Now we're back. That was fun. Just a little thing to keep you on your toes. That's kind of what the technology is here for. Anyway, yes, trick cyclist. Look it up. It doesn't mean what you think it means. Okay, here we go. The first topic of the day is tech predictions for the immediate future. I'm going to go through this pretty quickly because I am. Thank you to the 16 people that are here. Let me know what you think of these. Okay, tech predictions. There are several things on the horizon that are new technology that are just coming out right now, or they've been out for a little while, but they're just sort of taking over. They haven't yet hit their inflection point where they're being adopted as mainstream, okay? Some of these, as always, will fizzle out and not be the big thing that everyone expects them to be. And some of them will take over. They will be the big thing everyone expects them to be. And others will be things that no one expects them to be big, but they end up being really, really big. That's how the stuff goes. I've been around for a few decades, and this is what I've seen. So the future is going to be the same way. So electric cars, okay? Hybrids, fuel cell, hydrogen, all that kind of stuff. What's your prediction for that? This is what somebody was wondering. I think it's going to be a gradual transition. I think they're not going to be the mainstream for another couple of decades, actually. They are being accepted right now, which is great, but they're still not the majority of vehicles that are out there. And it's going to take a while for those to take over, at least in the West. Now, globally, it'll take even longer, but in the West, I'm predicting at least 20 years until they become the majority of the installed base out there. And the internal combustion engine is relegated to a thing of the past. Drones. What do you guys think of drones? about 5 to 10 years ago, they were predicting drones were going to be like this be-all, end-all thing that was going to revolutionize everything from fast food delivery to package delivery to supply chain. Like everything was going to be, there was going to be a revolution, and the entire system was going to be turned on its head because this opened up all kinds of possibilities. Hasn't really happened so far. Yes, they're here. Yes, they're very useful, but has it really changed everything? No, it hasn't. Even, supply chain, for vast majority of applications, it's not really affected. So I don't know. I think this is a reflection on not simply the technology. It's not about just the technology. It's about the adoption, which are social issues, how society regards it. And that's closely related to legislation, because if you're going to allow drones to fly everywhere, there's obviously got to be some laws in place to govern what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do, right? And that always hampers things. That always creates a real lag and puts a lot of restrictions on what you're doing, whatever technology we're talking about. And we're starting to see that with drones. Self-driving cars. Ditto. With drones, they were expecting this to like take over the world and revolutionize everything. I think it's going to happen, but nowhere near as quickly as some people are predicting. I think this is going to be another 20 or 30 years before these really become the mainstream. Not because of the technology. I think the technology is there. It's just the social issues, the acceptance of society, the stigma around it, whether real or imagined, and then the legal framework once again. Legal, safety, environmental, they tend to hamstring technology. They tend to delay the adoption and delay what you can do with technology. I'm not saying this is bad. I'm just saying that that's the reality. And so the problem is people make predictions just thinking about the technology from an engineering perspective, and they don't take into account social issues or legal issues that end up being a really big deal to these things being adopted by the mainstream. There's other things going on too. The Internet of Things, gene editing, quantum computing. These are all things that they're making predictions in. Now, until recently, AI was another one of these. Things like quantum computing, where it was like they've been talking about it for decades and decades, and it never happens. Kind of like the paperless office. You know what I'm saying? They've been talking about it for decades, but it never actually gets here. AI obviously recently is blown up, but it's a bit of a bubble because there's only a couple of things there. It isn't this be-all, end-all like they're pretending it is. It'll probably get there, but not right now. I can tell you that much for sure, and that's why we're experiencing a bit of a tech crunch at the moment. Just bubbles are the nature of technology adoption, not just how it goes. So it doesn't mean that it's not going to happen. It's just going to take a little bit longer, and that's usually how things go. So none of these things I predict are going to be the be-all, end-all that they're thinking of. Gene editing, Internet of Things, and quantum computing, they're all Internet of Things and gene editing are experiencing a lot of pushback, a lot of legal constraints and concerns. Quantum computing, it's not really here, as far as I know. It's this lovely thing that people talk about, but it never actually materializes. Fusion technology, that's another one. I'm really excited about this. I think that this is the way things are going to go, or some alternate nuclear technology, I think, is the way of the future for energy production. However, it's not here yet, and it won't be here for a while. I'm predicting 30 years, but it will gradually come in. And the great thing about fusion is that if it works the way, in theory, it could work, it would solve everything. You could turn water into vast quantities of energy and solve the world's energy needs, and it's clean and all this kind of stuff. I think that's incredibly exciting. I think it's exciting that they're making a lot of leaps and bounds and strides forward, but we're not there yet. We're not close to being there for this to be a production type thing. However, there's two big ones I think that are we should pay special attention to. The first one is AI, not the AI that people are talking about right this second, which is basically like they're just relabeling algorithms as AI when they're not. I think that's going to be really big, but not in its current form. It's going to have to evolve. It's like, you probably can't remember, but if you were around in the 90s like I was, I got on the internet in 1995. I was a little bit ahead of the curve. But they're predicting like the internet's here. It's here, like in 1995. This is it. Everything's here and it's going to revolutionize everything. Well, it wasn't quite ready to revolutionize everything yet in 1995. They were correct in that it is coming and it is going to be the future, but it just wasn't there in 1995. You needed like another 10 years or something for it to really take over and change everything. I think AI is going to be like that. It is the future, but not in its current form. And the final thing that I want to cover is humanoid robots. I think this is really going to be awesome because as far as I can tell, it's not a science problem, it's an engineering problem. And that means that, it's far more certain to occur. And I think it's incredibly exciting. They already have primitive ones out there like they have had forever. But I think we're right on the cusp of it being more accepted and actually getting out into the consumer market. I think it's going to revolutionize everything, absolutely everything. Because in theory, almost everything a person could do with their hands, you could get a robot to do. So it would change a lot of things. It would improve a lot of things. And will it be this big, negative thing? I'd say no. That's my personal opinion. No. Everybody's always, whenever new technology comes out, and a lot of new technology has come out in my time, but everybody always predicts doom. It's going to be the end of the world. It's going to ruin the entire world. It never does. People embrace it. It's incorporated, and it just becomes a part of our world, and it makes certain things easier and more convenient, and it makes certain other things possible. And that's why I think it's incredibly exciting. You could get your robot to shop for you. You could, get it to fix your house or your fence or your apartment, whatever. You could get it to do all these things for you. It would be an incredible opportunity. There's definitely room for that, and there's definitely a need for that. So I think that's incredibly exciting. So those are my tech predictions. Whether you agree with me or you disagree with me, hey, I'm not 100% vehement about any of these. It's all sheer conjecture. Let me know what you think in the chat. It's interesting to get feedback from people on what's going to be the next big thing. Okay, let's move on to the main topic of this live stream, which is the entrepreneurial mindset. Maybe you are fascinated with the idea of going into business for yourself, being your own boss, being able to take your destiny, career-wise, and financial destiny in your hands. Maybe that's you. And if you do, there's something I want to talk about. Wow, my screen blanked out again. I'm using Streamlabs OBS, and they just did an update today. And so far, this update doesn't seem to be really wonderful. Anyway, perhaps you are thinking of going into some kind of entrepreneurial venture. And this is why I love the idea of side hustles, because side hustles are a great way to sort of put your toe in the water of that world, learn the ropes, get familiar with it, see if it's for you, and do it in a sort of controlled, non-committal way where you keep your day job and you keep your life and you just experiment on the side. And if you make a little money on the side, great, but it could be something that you could grow into your full-time career if you wished and it made sense, right? So if this is you, there's obviously a way to think like an entrepreneur. And this is maybe the very beginning of the journey. So I wanted to give you 5 points that come from my experience on how your thinking changes when you're thinking like an entrepreneur as opposed to not being an entrepreneur. Let's dive in. Okay, hopefully my screen will come back. Belinda says, robots are needed to go into unmapped caves, wash windows, yes, excellent, exactly. It's not that they replace people, it's that they enhance, they limit, they make things safer, and they can do things that people can't, and they add to what we can do. I think it's a tremendous opportunity. Okay, entrepreneurial mindset. I'm going to give you 5 points. Point number 1, be cheap. Think cheap. The purpose of business is to make money. That's what it does. That's what it is. And unfortunately, when you introduce humans into this, people forget what the point is, and they imagine it's something else. Egos get involved, and pretty soon people care about the appearance of being in business. They want to feel like they're in business, so they care about wearing a fancy suit, having a fancy office, driving a fancy car, giving fancy business cards, having a fancy website, doing a fancy presentation, having a fancy pitch deck. All the things that I just listed have nothing to do with making money. You can do all the things I listed. You could have an amazing suit. You could have a $1,500 suit, have a fancy corner office. You could have a fancy car. You could have all the external signs of being a successful business person, but yet you have not made a cent. And I've seen this. I've worked in the world of startups and like tech entrepreneurship, and I've advised businesses. I've advised startup founders, and I've seen this. People that get money either in the form of a grant or a loan or investment from angel investors, and they blow it on stupid crap that has nothing to do with being in business, that doesn't help them be in business. It's all cosmetics. The purpose of business is to make money. In order to make money, you try to make money as quickly as possible and as cheaply as possible. So for example, if there's a business idea that you could do that would make you $1 million revenue a year, okay? The goal would be to try and get that up and running, first of all, as quickly as possible. If you could create that thing in 6 months, that would be more desirable than, say, taking 10 years to create that thing. And also, if it cost you $10,000 to create it, this thing that makes $1 million a year, you can get it off the ground for $10,000. That would be preferable than than having it cost you $5 million, right? These are very simple concepts when you spell them out. But in reality, you see people forgetting this all the time. And like I've shared in the previous edition of Side Hustle Ideas, a great way to think is not think, how can I pay for something? It's to think instead, how can I eliminate the need for that thing that I have to pay for? If we switch on our brain, we can usually find innovative ways to eliminate the need for something rather than simply just how to pay for it. Okay? So think cheap. If you can get something done for as little money as possible, that's one of the ways entrepreneurs think, because the whole goal of this is to make money. And that often means that you don't have a fancy office, you don't have a fancy suit, you don't have a fancy car, you don't have a fancy storefront, you don't have a fancy presentation, you don't have all the external signs that supposedly give you credibility, but you're making money hand over fist. So think cheap. That's my point number 1 of 5. This is really annoying. My screen is blank. Here we go. Okay, that's always encouraging. Okay, perfectly. Hopefully you guys can see me and hear me. Hopefully everything's fine, even though my screen is blank. Okay, point number 2 for generating or creating or having an entrepreneurial mindset is to focus on people and trends. I know this sounds self-evident, this sounds basic, but it's true. A lot of my experiences working with tech entrepreneurs and tech startup founders is they are generally technical types, engineers, technicians, that type of person. The type of person that would create something based on technology. Okay, great. Problem is, a lot of them are so focused on the technology that they forget that at the core of business, which is the point is to make money, even if you're just going to sell your invention, and that's how you're going to make your money. So you're not trying to sell it to the public, you're just trying to sell it to one buyer, one client that acquires your business. Even if that's it, the purpose is still to make money, right? In order to make money, you need connections to other people. At the very least, you need connections to customers. They're the ones that are going to give you the money, right? So the more successful businesses have connections to a lot of different customers as opposed to only a few customers, right? It's all about people. Another common situation is where you have created some technology that you think is wonderful. And I'm sure in absolute terms it is wonderful. It solves a problem. It solves a problem in a very neat, efficient way. The only problem is that you're the only one that sees value in this solution you've created. You can't convince anyone else that this particular thing you created is of any value, either because they're not aware of it, or because when they are made aware of it, they just don't see the value. You're not very good at communicating the value or persuading people. So it's a real shame, because if you're like a tech type entrepreneur, you've created this amazing solution, you then find that you can't sell it, and therefore you can't make money, and therefore the whole thing dies. And it's very unfortunate. So remember, entrepreneurship is all about people and trends. Some things are an easy sell. You just say the name of it and people go, I'll take two. Other things are a hard sell. People don't understand what it is. You have to explain, and it's complicated. And then when they kind of understand what it is, they don't see why they would want it. And then you have to explain that. And then when they kind of see why they would want it, you would then have to explain to them why they should pay for it, because they don't feel it's something they should pay for. Shouldn't that be free? You know? Right? That's a hard sell. Very tough to do. This is why if you hang out with people that are potential customers for the thing that you're doing, you get a feel for what they're receptive to, what they're not receptive to, what they're looking for, what they're not looking for. Entrepreneurship is all about that. You can't be an entrepreneur successfully and know nothing about the people in your market, know nothing about people, are not connected to anybody, don't understand what their needs are, don't understand what else is out there, or what people's perceptions are. You have to be tuned into this stuff. So that's point number two of the entrepreneurial mindset. You have to be tuned in. You have to focus on people and trends. Okay. Yeah, I gotta say, this is very disconcerting doing a live stream. Here we go. Okay, now my screen's back. That's weird. Streamlabs has obviously done an update that has messed up their UI a little bit. So there you go. Okay, point number 3 for the entrepreneurial mindset that I'd say is a big part of it is the concept of fish where the fish are. Have you heard of this? Very simple idea. You might be looking for something, right? And you're looking for something legitimate. That would make sense. But you're not looking in the right place. Or you're trying to sell something and you've got something legitimate to sell and people would want to buy it, but you're not telling the right group of people. You're not going to the right congregation of people that would be interested in this. This is a true concept for people when they're trying to get a job, for example. If you're trying to advertise how wonderful you are, how talented you are, excuse me, how much value you can provide, but you're not announcing this in the right room, you're not talking to the right people, you're not going to get very far. So fish where the fish are. If you're trying to sell something, you've got to go to where the people are that might be interested in that, right? A couple of episodes ago, we talked about getting into, say, the fashion industry. If you want to be in the fashion industry, the advice is to go to Paris or go to New York. That's where that industry is centralized. That's where the people are that can help you. That's where the money is. That's where the talent is. That's where the audience is. That's where all the institutional or industrial buyers or customers are. That's the places that can promote you. That's where they're located. And there's advantages of being close to them, right? So fish where the fish are. If you're wanting to get into a certain industry, go and immerse yourself in that industry. If you're wanting to sell something in that industry, go and find out where the crowd is, where the audience, where the market is for that industry. A lot of times people fail because they promote their things in the wrong place. That's, you might think this is where people go for that particular thing. It's not. Go do some research, go find out where those people are, and then you'll know when you announce something, people will listen and take notice. Exactly. Zanzuki has got it right in the chat. Thank you for participating. And thank you for the 21 people that are here. Okay, point number 4 for the entrepreneurial mindset, if I can get the word out, is systematize. Okay, that's lather, rinse, repeat. Now, just to take an obvious example, okay, you guys are watching me on YouTube, right? So everybody is hopefully familiar with YouTube. If you want to start a YouTube channel, I maintain that the hardest thing to do is to go from 0 subscribers to 10 subscribers. That's the hardest step. Because if you get 10 people that don't know you to subscribe to you and like your stuff and want more of it, if you can get 10, then you should be able to get 100. You just lather, rinse, repeat. You do the same thing more, and then you get 100. And if you get to 100, you can get to 1,000, et cetera, right? It doesn't actually get harder. It gets a little bit easier because you have more experience at it. But the hardest step is going from 0 to 10, right? So systematize. So what you do is you formalize what you're doing, you figure out what the problem is, you figure out how to solve it, and then you package that solution and implement it, right? In the example of a real business, a brick and mortar business, that would be like building other branches, right? So let's say you have one outlet where you operate it out of your home, and you get 10 customers in a couple of months, and then you get 100 customers after the first year. Great. Now, once you have 100 customers, maybe at that point it might make sense to sort of start up a second operation, maybe in another geographic location, get another 100 customers there, and then starting up new operations in different geographic locations. And then you grow exponentially, right? So systematize, lather, rinse, repeat. You have to think like that. If you can make $1, you can make 10. It's just a matter of details, tweaking the efficiency and then multiplying your efforts. Okay, like for example, usually the biggest transition that people find when they're starting a business and they're running a business is being able to transition from them running the operation to somebody else running the operation for you. Because if you're going to grow, you can't just keep doing everything yourself. You have to be able to create a sort of system that you can hire people and then bring them into that system and they run it, right? So that's the idea. So lather, rinse, repeat. Okay, and finally, the 5th point of 5 for how to think like an entrepreneur and get the entrepreneurial mindset, in my opinion, based on my experiences, okay, is valuation. Learn the principles of valuation. This is a little topic within the study of finance, okay? Finance is a part of business. Finance deals with money in the future. It deals with making decisions where you're trying to predict a positive outcome, right? Accounting is not finance. Accounting is money in the past, looking at where the money went. It's like a forensic examination of what happened. Finance is money in the future. That's where you're using predictions to help you make decisions. Okay, so if you can predict what will happen if I do this, and I can predict what will happen if I do that, that'll help me decide between should I do this and that. That's the idea. Okay, so learn the principles of valuation. For example, there's 3 basic concepts of how to place value on something, right? Three basic approaches. There's market-based valuation, there's cost-based valuation, and there's income-based valuation. So, for example, I have a cup, and in it has some sugar-free Red Bull, because yes, that's what all winners drink constantly. Now, how much is that worth? Well, the Red Bull cost me, say, $3. So I could say, well, this is worth $3, right? That's a cost-based valuation of this thing that I'm trying to place value on. How much is that worth? Well, it's worth $3. It cost me $3, therefore it's worth $3. Well, let's pretend that there's some crazy person, some crazy artistic eccentric in Brazil who wants to pay me $500,000 for this because this has some kind of intrinsic artistic value. Well, The market-based valuation would say that that cup is now worth $500,000 because someone is willing to pay $500,000. It doesn't matter what it costs. The only thing that matters is how much someone is willing to buy it for, right? It's like all those shows on TV that they had, like it was an antique roadshow where, you find some junk in somebody's garage and they take it down to the place and some expert with a monocle and a pullover tells them, this piece of crap that you've had in your attic for 10 years that's covered in dust that you think is just a pile of rags, it's actually worth $500,000, right? And they go, wow, thank you. And then they go away. It's kind of like that. It's the only thing that matters is what someone is willing to pay for it, right? If I take this cup and say this cost me $3, but then I tell you that Brad Pitt drank out of it, then you're willing to pay $500,000 for it. You see how that works? Right. So there's different ways of valuing something, including valuing business ideas or businesses, right? The third type would be income-based. So some things can make you money, right? So if you have a business that makes you, let's say, I don't know, $1,000 a year, okay? Not a big business, but something you've got on the side, like a side hustle. It makes $1,000 a year. Not very much. How much is that worth? Well, you could say, if it makes you $1,000 a year, we'll value it at a multiple of how much it makes every year. So let's say a multiple of 3. So it'll be worth $3,000. So I'll pay you $3,000 for that business, right? It doesn't have anything to do with how much it costs to start up that business, nor does it have anything to do with what some people are willing to pay, because there might be some crazy people out there willing to pay insane amounts of money, or they're not willing to buy it at all. They think it's worthless. But it's generating $1,000 a year. How much is it worth? You could say it's worth, say, $3,000 or some multiple of $1,000, depending on the industry it's in, right? So these are different ways of placing value on a thing, an idea, right? Knowing that will help you make better decisions from an entrepreneurial perspective. What's worth doing? What's not worth doing? How much is it worth? Because that's what entrepreneurs do. They see an opportunity and they think, okay, I can make money with that, either by selling it to someone or by selling it to the public. Right? So valuation is a pretty important concept. Everyone should be familiar with that if you're going to get into this type of game. And there you go. Those are my 5 recommendations for how to develop an entrepreneurial mindset. Let's go over to you guys and the questions. Zanzuki says, yeah, you also improve over time. You are doing that thing. Yes, exactly. Yeah, I know Chick-fil-A does that. Yes. Okay, so how do you say this? JFTY Locke, Jeff D. Locke says, how do you avoid bad business? Now, what do you mean by that? Bad business decisions? If you're referring to starting a business that is unsuccessful, there's many things. Like first of all, you have this idea of validation, right? Validation is where you test a theory. So if you have a theory that you could make money doing something, okay, what we want to do is we want to get some evidence for that. We don't want to just rely on our dogma, our belief. You've never done it before, but by God, you believe that it's a surefire thing. That's very dangerous. Good ideas start like that, but you don't just act on that. Then you validate. You say, okay, let's put on our hat as a skeptic and say, I don't believe you. I don't believe that it's going to work out the way that you say it will. Let's get some evidence. So how do you do that? Well, without spending a lot of money or time or energy, you want some kind of evidence that this is going to work. Now, what form would that evidence take? Would it take the form of customers lined up around the corner wanting to pay you for that thing? Would that convince you that you can make money for it, with it? Probably. That's probably the ultimate validation. So let's say you have an idea. You have an idea that you could make money, I don't know, selling old books. Okay. Let's say you've inherited lots and lots of old books, a couple thousand old books from like a deceased family member or something like, something. Or maybe you've got a special deal with the library. They said, hey, the person that runs the library, and they said, we got a lot of old books. We really don't know what to do with. We were going to throw them in the dumpster. And you said, hey, I'll take those. So you've got a bunch of old books on your hands, right? Now you're convinced that they're worth something, that you can make money selling them, right? And you want to try this. And maybe you have some doubters, some haters that are saying, you're delusional. You'll never make money selling that old crap, right? So what you want to try and do is you want to validate it. You don't want to fully set up the business and try and do it. You want to try and get some evidence very quickly that you could make money doing this if you went ahead. So the ultimate form of that would be to get customers lined up. They say, hey, Bill, I want to buy some of these books that you have for sale. Here's $20. Would that be enough? $5 a book. I want to buy 4 books, right? That would probably convince me. If I got, say, 10 people to do that, say within a day, that would convince me that there's demand for it, that I could make money. People are there. They want it. People are willing to pay, and they're willing to pay a certain amount that I could make money doing this. So $5 a book would be good, right? If I only get 2 people showing up, maybe that's not enough to convince me. But 10 people within a very short period of time, that would convince me. So what I need to do is I need to get that. So the ultimate validation, according to me and my experience, is if you can put out like a sort of sales pitch and you say, look, I got books for sale. They're $5 a book. Here's some of the books. And you get a response. People saying, I'll take 2. I'll order 2. Or I'll order 5. Or I'll order 3. And I'll pay your price. To me, that convinces, that's very strong, compelling evidence that that's going to work. So you don't have to actually get your hands on the books. You don't have to actually set up a store in physical terms. You don't have to have the inventory. But what you do need to do is you do need to get that sales offer, somebody willing to buy it. Okay? So go for that. Now, if you can't get that, if you try in your best efforts and you can't get a single person that says, I'd like to buy that, then maybe you should rethink your plan of spending money to create a store, get all the inventory, go all in, and offering it for sale. Right? It's a way to avoid something not working before you commit fully to it and spend a lot of money on it. Okay? And whether you're dealing with investors or partners or just yourself, there's always going to be a skeptic, or there always should be a skeptic, that says, I don't believe, your theory. Show me the evidence that that's actually going to occur. Okay? So that's a big part of avoiding bad business decisions. You got a theory? Great. Awesome. You're on your way. Now you've got to prove it. Before you really take risks, prove it to yourself or to others, right? It's the same thing incidentally, this is the same process if you had a potential investor wanting to partner with you in some way. You'd have to convince them, right? So you'd have to do this anyway. Zanzuki says, Bill, how do you deal with wanting to start a business, but you feel like you need to build more skills related to the business you are wanting to build? Excellent question, Zanzuki. You're asking some good questions. Okay, so here's the deal. Everyone starts out pretty much from that position. You want to do something, but you're not an expert in it, and maybe you're not an expert in business in general, right? That's where pretty much everyone starts from. So you're going to need 2 things. You're going to need, for want of a better word, book learning to learn about business in general. For example, if you don't understand the first thing about accounting, it's kind of hard to be successful in business. Or you don't understand the first thing about marketing, like just what it is and how it works and how you sell. If you don't understand any of that, you're probably going to want to learn, right? So the first thing you need is sort of the theory. The second thing you need is hard experience in the specific industry and the specific thing you're wanting to do. Okay? Let's talk about the first thing. Learn business. Now, you can either go to business school or you can take business classes, right? I've created a course for precisely that purpose. Okay, so check out that course if you're interested. That will get you the knowledge you need in business. You will understand business through and through. So you got that part covered, but you may not then have any specific knowledge of the industry that you're specifically wanting to do, right? So let's say you want to get into the world of reselling old, retro arcade games, right? You rent them out or you sell them, you buy them, you refurbish them, you rent them out or you sell them. Maybe there's huge money in that, or you believe there is. But you don't know anything about buying or selling arcades. You don't know where you get them from. You don't know who would buy them. You don't know how much they would pay. You don't know where these people are or what they're looking for or, why they would want them. Is it just for themselves or is it just so they can open up like arcade businesses and, have kids come in and play arcade? Like, I don't know. So you don't know anything about that. You've never worked in that industry. You've never been in one of those places. So you don't know. All you know is that you're passionate about old arcade games, okay? So you would want to get some experience in that industry. So you would want to, first of all, if you live in a place where those businesses exist, try to have some contact with them. Go down there and go look around, see if the owner will give you a tour of the place. Sit down with the owners or the operators and ask them questions, see what they do. You go to those places. If they have a convention or an association for that industry, join it, attend the events, go to the trade shows. You know what I mean? Like immerse yourself in the center of that industry. Go hang out in those places where you might rub elbows with people in that business, and so on. Right? So one way is to get a job, even if it's for 6 months. Get a job in that business. It gets you on the inside of it. There's so many advantages. You can see how it works. You can get letters of recommendation. You can network within that business because now you're on the inside of it. There's all kinds of advantages to doing that. There's many different ways of doing this, but that's the one thing you're going to need is you're going to need to be on the inside of that industry, because when you're on the outside of an industry, it's very, very hard to break in because you don't know how things are set up and why they're set up that way, right? So it's like sort of two aspects of learning. One is the theory and one is the practical. And the other element of the practical side is trying things. So if you're trying to do business with an arcade, an arcade business, if you are passionate about refurbishing arcade games, go and see if you can, if they need someone to repair the games or to overhaul them or, something like that, enhance them, add new, replace all the little components or the switches or the joysticks or clean them up or, whatever. See if you can offer those services and understand the needs of these places. Maybe you discover that they're not looking for that. And they're not looking for that because they don't care about cleaning them. They only lease them and they don't own them. And so at the end of 2 months, they go back to the leaser, right? So you're learning about the industry from the inside. So these are all things that you can try and do. The bottom line is you got to get on the inside of that industry, learn how it works, learn what their needs are, learn the perspective of the people in it. And once you have that knowledge, you will be able to make money. It's as simple as that. Hopefully that answers your question. That's a very intelligent question. I wish I could see how many people are in the chat. Here we go. 20 people. 20 people are here. Thank you for being here. You guys are awesome. Yes, incidentally, if you are interested in learning business, take that course. For $100, that will save you so much in terms of learning things the hard way. And the reason I can say that is because that's what getting an MBA did for me. in my life. I actually became a CEO before I had an MBA, a CEO of a very small company before I had an MBA. And then I got an MBA and I moved up from there. But it's like the great thing about having experience before you get an MBA is that you go back to school and they essentially lay down some principles for you and you go, of course, that's why that thing didn't work. That thing that I tried to do, that's why it didn't work. And that's why this thing did work. Now that I know the principles, I can see it. Man, I wish I knew this before. I'd have saved so much time and effort. Right? So that's, and I've talked to other business people that have had similar experiences. This is the great thing about that type of learning, especially when you're not just doing it when you're young, but you're doing it when you're a bit more experienced and you're coming back, and then you learn business properly. You take like an MBA or something. That's a very common feeling, apparently. I've been given to understand. Zanzuki says, all right, thank you, Bill. You're welcome. Yeah, I know more of the technical side of the business. I want to build, however, not so much the business side. Yes, it's a marriage of both of those things. You need both of those things to succeed. You obviously need technical knowledge in the specific technical area. That's usually going to be the operations of the business. But beyond that, you need to know how to sell it, how to package it. You need to understand the accounting, at least to a degree where you can sell it at a profit, right? You don't want to sell it for a loss. And you need to make sure that the market will sustain the prices necessary for you to sell it at a profit, or else there's not much point of doing this, right? So there's definitely a business side to what you're doing. Now, as I kind of started to say earlier, I've worked with startup founders that, they justify that lack of knowledge about business and the market by saying, well, I'm not interested in making money with this by selling it. What I want to do is I want to create the technology and then sell the business. I want to sell the intellectual property and the business. I want it to be acquired by a larger entity, and then they pay me off and I go away. That's my plan. And the problem with this is like, okay, maybe you could get away with that, maybe, but the problem is you're justifying not having to know anything about the rest of the business. You don't need to know who this is for. You don't need to know how to sell it to them. You don't need to know how to convince them. You don't need to know what else is going on in the marketplace. You've just sort of justified staying ignorant of all those things. And I've seen a lot of people go down that road and fail because what happens is either they don't create the technology, they never finish, or if they do, they finish, but then realize that no one is interested and they don't know, how do I contact someone who would want to acquire me? And then they're struggling with, how do I get taken seriously by those people? Because maybe they know the business that's their target, but they don't know how to approach them in such a way that the business takes them seriously. And then they fail to convince the business this is something that they should do. Right? So they get all the way down the road and then they discover that at the end. And that's failure. You created this thing, you think it's wonderful, but nobody else does. You've made no money selling it directly, and nobody wants to acquire you or invest in you. Right? This is the problem. So this is where people see the folly of not, caring about, like, who would want this? How do I convince them that it's a good thing? How do I sell it to them? How do I make it appealing? And what's the mindset of the people that might want to buy this? And where are those people? Right? These are pretty important questions. Zanzuki says, knowledge is power. It is important to educate oneself as much as possible. It makes life a lot easier. Yes, but I will add a caveat to that. Just education for the sake of education is not necessarily the answer. It has to be very specific education that you can apply. So if you want to be in business, I'd recommend that people learn business. But more importantly, like don't get me wrong, that's very important. But even more importantly than that is getting hard experience in the specific industry that you want to do. Being on the inside of it, being a player in it. That's why a lot of people can turn their day jobs into some kind of side hustle or some kind of entrepreneurial venture. Not necessarily that you would do both at the same time, really, but if you're on the inside of a business for your day job and you see the inefficiencies and you see the need for something better and you're in a position to offer something better, it's not because you're an absolute genius that has figured something out that nobody else could figure out. It's just that you're the one that's been there and seen how poorly things work and you see the need for something better. Nobody else really is in that position, or nobody who's willing to do anything about it is in that position. Whereas you are, Now you need more, like I say, you need to validate. You can't just have this theory that, well, I could do this better as a solo contractor. So I quit my job and I start up as a solo contractor and then discover nobody wants to engage me. Right? You'd have to validate it first. But a lot of people do successful businesses by seeing a need, by being on the inside of an industry for their day job, and they turn that into their own career. Paying attention to the market. Exactly. Yeah. So there you go. So if there's any questions, I see there's 15 people here. Ask them now or forever hold your peace. I will be winding this down in a couple of minutes if I don't get any questions. But that's the entrepreneurial mindset. Those are some ways of thinking that generally entrepreneurs are thinking in those terms that people who aren't entrepreneurs are not. Okay? That allows them to, spot opportunities where they could make money with it and successfully get the venture off the ground. Turn it from an idea into a going concern, something that's bringing money in, and it's bringing money in at a profit, right? You're not just you're not paying $100 to make a dime every month. You're bringing a profit in. And it stems from that type of thinking. So just a quick recap. Number one, be cheap. Whatever you do, don't spend a ton of extra money if you don't have to. The whole point of business is to make money and to do it as cheaply and quickly as possible if you can do it. Number two, focus on people and trends, because even as much as some of us introverts don't want to admit it, business is based on the connections between people. After all, for a start, you need customers, and customers are not you. You can't succeed in a vacuum. You need customers to be aware of your thing, value your thing, and be able to buy your thing from you. And you have to make a profit doing it. So you need them. And you also need a lot of other people when you think about it. So you have to be focused on people, what they're receptive to, what they're looking for, what their perceptions are. Okay? Number three, fish where the fish are. It's not just about going to people. You have to go to the right people, right? You have to find the crowd that's receptive to the thing you're doing. You have to use them to get information, and then you have to be able to sell to them. Okay? Number four is systematize what you're doing. That helps you grow. If you do something right, you've got the formula. Lather, rinse, repeat. Try and multiply that formula. And five is validation. Learn the principles of validation. That's the most important area of finance if you're going to be an entrepreneur. And that will help you understand how much things are worth, or they could be worth, right? Very important if you want to be in business. If you're trying to look at the world and evaluate, is that an opportunity or not? Very important to be able to put a dollar value or a number on things, or potential dollar value on things. If you can't do that, then you don't know how much anything is worth. That's probably going to be you're going to be hamstrung some way. Okay. Belinda says people has nostalgia. If the customer is used to a loved business for years and then he gets a new owner, reputation can be gone and not regained. Yes, in business jargon, that means the goodwill follows the owner and not necessarily the brand. You're absolutely right. Probably the most extreme form of that is like in construction. You care about the actual person doing the work, not necessarily the company that they work for. That applies a lot in various service industries too. So yeah, exactly. Like from looking at a business from the outside, it looks easy. It looks like, oh yeah, all I have to do is offer these services and people will buy. But you may not be aware of things like this concept that Belinda just brought up, is that, yeah, the customers are loyal to the person that they bought from last time. It's very hard for you. You could offer the same thing. You could even be a little bit cheaper offering the same thing, but they'll still buy from their original provider or supplier, not from you. It could be infuriating because it looks so easy from the outside, but once you're in it, you see that, that's a thing, right? There's brand recognition. It's an intangible thing that gives my competitors the advantage over me, right? What if you could twist that in your favor? Right? The more of these concepts you know, the more weapons you have in your cause, right? Zanzuki says, Bill, how do you hire employees that won't become a problem? Well, that's a different topic. That's a big topic, and it's a bit different. So, Belinda says, I meant people have nostalgia. Yes, it's not really nostalgia. It's just another way to describe it. I would use the word loyalty. Right? If you talk to a marketer, they'll say brand equity, right? Brand recognition. So yeah. Anyway, I'm going to wind this down now. So thank you for being here. Hopefully you guys learned something. Check out my courses, especially my writing course, if I can point to that properly. That's the easiest, quickest course that I have on offer. Several people have gotten that one recently, and I've got some good feedback. So check that out. That will certainly help your career. I will be back next week with another edition of Side Hustle Ideas. Stick around today. I will be live again in an hour with my other live stream, which is How to Get Hired, where we talk about careers and jobs and job interviews and resumes and all that kind of stuff, if you're into that. So I will see you then. Thank you for joining me. You guys are awesome. I wish you nothing but the best going forward. And take care.